Hello and welcome to a special episode of In Conversation With. I hope you're all doing well. So the Boston Virtual Experience and our own run club, Boston Challenges, have been keeping many of you busy, but we know that for lots of runners, not having the Boston Marathon as we know it has really left a big gap in the calendar. So with that said, for today's episode, I am very happy to welcome the award-winning Jon Dunham, producer, director, cinematographer, to talk about his amazing Boston Marathon documentary. Jon, welcome to our virtual studio.
Thank you.
So firstly, tell everybody where you are and how things have been for you in the past few months.
At this moment, I'm at home. I'm in Naples, Italy. And for really pretty much this whole year, we haven't done much. We've just been at home. We haven't traveled outside of Italy all year, which is very unusual. Normally, we would have done a fair amount of travel by now, including we were at the Boston Marathon last year, and obviously weren't able to do that this year. So it's been a very unusual year for us. But if we're going to be stuck in a place, I could be stuck in much worse places than Italy. So I'm not complaining.
Take the positives. So we're going to talk today about all things Boston Marathon documentary, and then in a few weeks we're going to chat to you again about the Spirit of the Marathon documentary, which focuses on another of the world's marathon majors, namely the Bank of America Chicago Marathon. So let's turn our attention to Boston. The documentary was filmed, or the final filming was done in 2014. So give us the backstory to the documentary, when you first planned to create it, your vision, and how that perhaps changed due to the events of 2013.
Actually, the filming started in 2014. So while there were plans to make a Boston film years, prior, it dates back to my first film, Spirit of the Marathon. I started talking to executive producer, the executive producer or one of our producers of Boston, Tom Derderian, back then about making the Boston film. And so that was like, 10, 15 years in advance. And we just kept the conversation alive over the years, even after Spirit of the Marathon. And I went back to the BAA from time to time, and they were interested in making a film. So we were gearing up to, in fact, do that just prior to the 2013 race. And then that race changed everything. And immediately afterward, my personal reaction was, okay, we're not going to make a film, at least not for a long time, because all the focus was on the tragedy. And I wanted to make a film about the Boston Marathon. But I started through that summer, as I was kind of processing things, I started thinking forward to what the next year was going to be like, what 2014 would be like. And I thought, it's going to be really special and unique in the history of the Boston Marathon, and somebody should record that, and I'd like to do that. So at that point, we said, okay, yeah, we're going to go ahead and make a film like we've always talked about, and this time we'll just incorporate some of the, the 2013 and 2014 also. So go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, like you said, the documentary is really that beautiful mix of the history of such an iconic race and then the emotional account of what happened in 2013. So how difficult was it to try and get the balance of that right?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We knew that was going to be an issue from the very start. We didn't want to, as I said, my interest was always in making a film about the race, not the tragedy. So, you could very easily put too much attention on the tragedy, and then it would be about that. But if you, on the other hand, if you focus too much on the race, you could end up making a film that felt like it was kind of not giving enough weight to what had happened in 2013, and as importantly, I always say, in 2014. So we always knew from the beginning that there had to be a very precise balance achieved with that, and we kept that in our thinking all throughout the production of the film. Worked very, very hard on it, and a lot of the credit goes to the editor of the film, Lenny Feinstein, who just did a magnificent job putting it all together and making it work.
I love the way that it sort of seesaws back and forth. So like you say, you don't get too caught up in one part of it, and you really come out of the film feeling like you understand the whole journey of the marathon and the highs and lows. Thinking about the historical piece and the characters who recounted their memories and shared their stories, even to this day, who was it that stood out for you? If you could pick one or two, who are those sort of special people?
Obviously, with a race that has over 100 years of history, there's, you know, so many great stories and people that we met along the way. You know, I loved going to Japan, and I gathered up all but one of the living Japanese Boston Marathon champions. And that was a real treat because they kind of came from all different parts of Japan, and we interviewed them in a couple of different places. But in some cases, I was able to go to them. In other cases, they came to me. But they were all so thrilled. And you know, I don't speak any Japanese, and they didn't speak any English. But you know, through interpreters and everything, we were able to communicate. And they all brought their paraphernalia. They all brought their medals, and you know, that their awards from having won the race, their numbers, their old photos. And you could just, you know, and these are men that are, you know, by now in their 70s and 80s, and they were just so thrilled that somebody was telling the Boston Marathon story. So that was a lot of fun. And then personally, I really loved going to Australia and filming with Rob de Castella. I thought I was only going to go once, but through good fortune, I actually had the opportunity to go twice, and I made 2 separate trips to Australia to film with him. And the second time around, we spent time with him and his. He has something called the Indigenous Marathon Foundation, and he's training young Aborigine men and women to run the marathon and change their lives in a positive way. Through running, and I just loved that experience. We went to the Red Centre of Australia. We were in Alice Springs, and filming with them. There's a sequence in the film from that part of the production that it's one of the most special parts to me.
That's right. He stands on the road and they do a training run, and the encouragement that he gives them is really quite powerful. And for someone to have come from the Boston Marathon to the backwaters of Australia is really, yeah, quite an incredible journey.
It really was, and he's totally genuine. You know, so it was very moving to see, you know, the effect that he's having, you know, in these people's lives.
The 2013 incident really changed the perception of the marathon for a lot of people, and really put it on people's radars as well. And it's something that, you know, they'll never forget. How did you approach speaking to people who had been affected by that, and how do you decide how to sort of convey those emotions without, you know, making it too raw for them?
Yeah, that was really tough. It continues to be really tough. We, you know, as I said earlier, we always really wanted to strike the correct balance between the race history and specifically 2013. And we brought in a lot of different people. I mean, basically, we said anybody that was affected by what happened that day, you know, we'd like to hear from you if you want to tell your story. And we did a lot of interviews. We set up a room in one of the hotels there at Copley Square, and just saw many people and recorded many hours of different people's experiences, whether they were runners or spectators or first responders, just all kinds of different points of view of what had happened that day, personal experiences. And, you know, just again, through the editing, through the interviewing, and then later on the editing, you know, just tried to always be very sensitive about the way that we were telling the story, and to tell it in a very thoughtful way, and not certainly, you know, not try and create any kind of sensationalism around it. I mean, that wasn't the objective at all. We wanted it to be real and told from, you know, the people that lived it. So we worked really hard on it. A lot of credit goes to our editor again, my fellow producers, Megan and Eleanor in particular, we all worked very, very hard on that part of the film, and I think we got it right.
I certainly do, and it's something that's timeless, and you can watch over and over again. And you delved so deeply into the marathon, and you know it inside out now, and its history and its challenges. And what do you think is it that makes the Boston Marathon so special for so many? It really is iconic. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's really a special race. And of course, I've been to many different marathons and races all over the world. Boston is, because of its history, obviously, I hate to use that cliche, but it is. I mean, it's just got this long tradition. It's the tradition, and you go there. One of the things that I love about being in Boston, I'm not from Boston, but every time I'm able to go there, and I walk down Boylston Street and I'm there at the finish line, especially when it's Boston Marathon time, and they're setting up the finish line structure, and everybody's around town with all their, they're wearing their jackets and everything, and you can feel the marathon in the air. You go to the finish line, and it's like you sense something there. It just feels like, Mecca for the marathoner in a sense, So it's you sense the history of the race while you're there, and it's really something special. It's something very, very unique that I've not experienced at any other marathon, because no other marathon has quite the history that the Boston Marathon does.
Yeah, and the documentary really is powerful and has received rave reviews. You talked about the people that you worked on with the documentary with. What accolade meant the most to you, and what are you most proud of about this piece of work as a team?
As we were talking about earlier, the fact that we had to be very careful about how we told the 2013 and 2014 race stories. Talking with Bill Richard, who was the father of Martin Richard, who was tragically lost during the bombings. Bill and the whole family, the Richard family, has been incredibly gracious during the production of the film and afterward. And after a screening of the film that we did in Boston, Bill came up to me and he just, he was grateful for the work that we had done and appreciative. And he said that he felt like we had gotten it right. And that just meant so much to me, because it's a really hard thing to do. How do you tell these stories? And I myself am a father. I have a 3-year-old son, and I just can't imagine that kind of a tragedy occurring in my life. And so to know that that the Richard family appreciates the film and feels good about what we were able to do with it, that's very important to me.
Yeah, that's the sort of truest compliment you could really have on that work. And I really recommend and urge anyone who has not yet seen it to watch it. And if you've watched it, you can certainly watch it again. So we're going to catch up again in a couple of weeks, and we're going to talk about The Spirit of the Marathon, which came before the Boston documentary. But I started to wonder, Jon, why you were doing all these marathon documentaries. And then I learned that you are a 25-time marathon runner yourself. So I'd love to end this episode with you sharing your own running story and a few of your highlights of that journey.
Well, like a true runner, I think the number's actually more like 27. Although I'd have to go back and really count them up somehow. But I'm definitely over 25. I think I'm at 27.
I'm very impressed. So how did you fall into this somehow?
Yeah, I started when I was really young. It was kind of a crazy thing. I mean, I grew up in Southern California. I had seen the Los Angeles Marathon on TV, and I got this idea in my head that I wanted to run it. And I was 15 years old, and my parents drove me to the starting line. I was too young, I couldn't drive a car at that age. And they dropped me off there and just turned me loose on the streets of LA. And so I ran the LA Marathon when I was 15. And
wow.
I I hadn't trained for it at all. I mean, in fact, the longest distance I had ever run prior to the marathon was 1.5 miles, which was just totally crazy, of course. But you do crazy things. You think, you know, when you're 15 years old, you think you can do anything. But I did it. I finished the race, and it was, you know, not a stellar time, obviously, but I finished it, and it was just a profound experience for me. Just the fact that I was able to complete, you know, all 26.2 miles. I was euphoric, and it again, I hate to use the cliche, but it was truly a life-changing experience for me. Obviously, because, you know, I ended up making 3 films about the marathon. I didn't do it that way, but it happened, and helped me on you know, my career path, and I live here in Italy today because of it also. So it's, you know, there's a lot that I owe to running and the marathon and the LA marathon, to be specific. To this day, that's a very, very special race to me because of my first.
Wow, what a story. Have you run any of the majors?
Yeah, I've run Chicago I think I've run Chicago 4 or 5 times. I love the Chicago Marathon. That's where my PR is, of course. Nice, flat, fast course, generally cool weather. And I love the city of Chicago. It's just such a wonderful city. I've run New York also. And I guess that's it. You know, I've run other marathons, but from the list of the majors, you know, just Chicago and New York. So
And Boston,
maybe I can.
you know, inside out, but you just haven't run the course yet yourself.
I've run all over the Boston Marathon course, but I haven't actually run the Boston Marathon.
Not done the point to point yet.
Yeah, I have done point to point many, many times, and many on foot, in the car, and you know, I know that course, you know, backwards and forwards, but I haven't run it as a race.
Well, maybe there'll be a time, John, where we lace up your racing shoes and you get your star for Boston as well, because you've got 2 stars. So you're on your way for your 6-star journey, which I also know you know a lot about because you have worked with us on Boston and other races before. So it's you're definitely part of the team here.
Very good. Would love to.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. The Boston Marathon documentary is outstanding, and everybody will enjoy reminiscing about the history of such an iconic race. And we will see you back here in a couple of weeks to talk about the spirit of the marathon. So take care for now, and we'll see you soon. So if you enjoyed my conversation with Jon Dunham about the Boston Marathon documentary, we have a special treat for you. This Sunday, the 13th of September, go to this very link with this password and you can watch the documentary free and exclusive on our channels for 24 hours. You can relive the highs and lows of all things Boston. Happy watching.